It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. As promised, we continue our exploration of green spaces by now honing in on how we are protecting them. In the theme of environmental conversation in today's edition of So Now What? As we explore the rights we have to ensure a clean and healthy environment for ourselves and our loved ones and future generations. So today we are calling upon the legal guidance of expert in environmental law, attorney at the Centre for Environmental Rights. Perfect person to chat to this morning, Tobacco Gumede. Tobacco, very good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thanks. And how are you?
You know what? We
Very
can't
excited,
complain. I mean, I think for all of us, we sometimes take our rights as people for granted. We focus on the basic ones, but where are our rights to a healthy environment? Are they being upheld and currently being protected?
Thanks, Zoe. So our rights to a healthy environment is actually entrenched in our Constitution, which, as we all know, is the supreme law of the land. So Section 24, to be specific, says that everyone has the right to a healthy environment. And it further says that the rights should be protected for present and future generations. It places this obligation on the state or government to then come up with legislative measures or other measures to ensure that this right is protected. So you can also find it in the National Environmental Management Act, which is famously known as NEMA. So anything environmentally related, NEMA is your Bible, because it basically guides us on how to practically give life to Section 24 of the Constitution. It also sets out fundamental principles on environmental decision-making. So in terms of, is the law being implemented when it comes to environmental rights? Well, it's a yes and no. Sometimes we find that it is not implemented the way that we would like to, because often you find that development is prioritized more than the right to protect the environment.
Completely, and hence why the work you are doing is so vitally important. So let's take that conversation a step further. I think many people out there, especially those in disenfranchised areas, live close to factories, maybe industrial areas, where that idea of growth is maybe dominating over the rights when it comes to our environment. Which grounds do we have to hold corporations responsible for their environmental footprint? Who is going after these big companies?
So at the Centre for Environmental Rights, we actually work closely with communities who live very close to polluting industries. For example, mining operations and coal-fired power stations. And we actually see this impact that these communities are subjected to. So it's important to note that when these corporations, before they can even operate, they go through an application process. And during that process, they need to prove to the decision maker that their operations will not cause unreasonable environmental degradation and will not unreasonably impact you and I in terms of their operations. So the decision maker must then be satisfied that that operation will not cause environmental harm. So once the licenses or authorizations are approved, then it has environmental conditions and environmental obligations, which these companies need to comply with. So we have that recourse if we find that, you are suffering some form of harm because of a particular operation. You can then report that particular corporation to the responsible authority for not following or complying with the environmental conditions or environmental obligations. But sometimes it's often hard for us to get the documents. So by virtue of you just suffering harm from that operation, you are able to report the corporation to the responsible authority, whether it's the Departments of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, whether it's the Departments of Mineral Resources and Energy, but you have that right to report that particular operation.
And I suppose it leads me to the conclusion that, again, the work that you're doing, because I would imagine that for many of these communities, they wouldn't have access to that level of communication. Hence, they need advocates like yourself to be able to step in there. We are going to be delving even deeper into this topic. Thank you so much. Some gems there already. We are talking about our rights and that are enshrined in our Constitution to protect the environment as it impacts us. Really, really interesting new frontline where I imagine so much new legislation needs to be locked down and, most importantly, implemented. So we're going to continue this discussion in just a moment. Stick around.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to this green edition of Expresso this morning, and we are continuing our So Now What legal segment right now with expert in environmental law, Tobeka Gumede. Now, in case you missed it, a little bit earlier we discussed the rights that we have to enjoy a healthy environment and the punishment faced for pollution. In fact, it's part of our constitution. So we are going to throw a few more scenarios your way, Tobeka. Thanks for sticking around.
Yes, Tobeka. So imagine this scenario. I live in an area that is densely populated by, factories that are releasing harmful waste into the air, and I subsequently develop issues with my breathing. Do I have legal grounds to sue the company for my declining health?
Thank you for that question. So you definitely have legal grounds to sue the company for your ill health. What is very sad about that scenario, though, is that companies often, they know that you need to prove that, the ill health is as a result of their operations. And in courts, it's very hard to prove that. So they use that against you, especially if you're a community member. It becomes quite a daunting process because the companies then allege that, well, there are so many other things that are happening around in this area. There's so many other factories or operations. How can you prove that I'm responsible for your ill health? So it just becomes, that difficulty that one faces of how do you then actually prove that the ill health is connected to that particular operation. But to answer your question, you definitely have the recourse to sue the company. It's just a matter of evidence and proving that they are the cause of your ill health.
Hence why we need a friend in law like yourself to fight those kind of battles, I would imagine. I'm going to play devil's advocate here and look at this from a slightly different lens here. Does my employer have the right to fire me if I refuse to do a task that negatively impacts my health or the environment? So, for example, if my employer instructs me to work with asbestos, for instance, or maybe improperly dispose of waste material, do I have a leg to stand on?
You definitely do so, although this does not fall within the scope of our work, but I can confidently say that in terms of the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the employer has the duty to ensure that their employees have a safe working environment. So even if by nature your job, has some kind of risk or danger to it, the employer has the obligation to make sure that you have the necessary equipment or there are precautionary measures in place. And you have the right to refuse if you see that, whatever job that you are being asked to do is actually a danger to your health or your well-being. So if you are, for instance, fired for refusing to do something that is dangerous, then you can obviously take them to the CCMA. But the employee is definitely protected from such incidents.
Okay.
There is recourse.
It's good to know. Now, Tobeka, I also want to know, I think a lot of us sometimes view things that we don't know who the person is to contact. So who can I go to find out, if I find out that a corporation or individual is directly harming my natural environment, either, via improper waste management or pollution of water sources or natural habitats? Who can I go to report them?
So you can definitely go to the Departments of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. They are the ones who are responsible for ensuring environmental management conservation. So if you find that you are now suffering because of some environmental violation, they actually have a hotline which you can call, which is free, and you can report that particular violation. If you'd like, I can give you the contact details for that. Please do, I heard you mentioning waste as well. Sure. So in terms of waste as well, or anything water related, you can also report to the Department of Water and Sanitation. They also have a hotline where you can report to make it easier for people to report environmental violations. So in terms of the Departments of Forestry and Fisheries and the Environment, the hotline is 0800 200 200.
Okay. 0800
200 200.
That's easy to remember.
It is easy enough. Tobeka, thank you so much. It is, I think, on some level, very encouraging to know that there are people like yourself and your organization doing the work that you're doing on behalf of the little guy and on behalf of the environment, because I think we've got to let it sink in at some point that we share the space, that we need our environment to be sustainable for the long term. Thank you so much for your wise words this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Big thank you to our legal pundit, Tobeka Gumede. And if you'd like to reach out personally and make use of her very sound services, please visit the Centre for Environmental Rights. Excuse me, that's at cer.org.za. That's cer.org.za.